Hello everybody and welcome to one of my favorite videos to do, which is ranking all of the cards, getting my quote-unquote hype ranking in, to see where I feel like these cards are going to fit into the card pool, how good I think the cards are, yada, yada, yada. I like doing these videos because I get to put my predictions in, and then a year later I get to look back and see how right or wrong I was, and I also get to use these to inspire other videos in the future. Like I had my most recent Hemlock Veil cards I was wrong about video. That's what I use this data for, so I'm like able to get my initial predictions in, and then go from there. As I'm always looking to try new things and improve, the format of this video is changing slightly. Previously, I would just have the card on the screen and I would say my rating. But this time, Benj Belgar, thank you so much for the 5 months at the Golden Table. This time I'm actually going to be having it on the screen for people to easily see. There also is going to be our the spreadsheet, which you can find in the video description. Notably though, by the time that this video is up, I'm probably going to have recorded all of the other ones. So if you do not want to be spoiled, I highly advise not checking this out if you do care about that kind of thing. However, as you can see, I have our rating this, my rating this year, chat's rating this year, and then we're going to be doing this again next year to see kind of the difference and how they go. There's a lot of empty space because I have to put all the other cards in here, and then we also have to add a spot for the specialist cards, but this is what we're doing today. So, I'm going to put the card on screen. I'm going to let chat do a ranking. Which is why you should always be watching us live on Twitch, where I stream Arkham every Tuesday and Friday, so you can join in on all the fun. And then I'm going to be talking about it, giving my rating, and we're going to go from there. Notably, I said this with Hemlock Veil, this design team are actually like pretty good at making balanced cards. So I'm expecting a lot of my cards in my rating to live in like a 3.0. Like, they're going to kind of live in, like, this area. The 2.5 to the 3.5. There are going to be some exceptions, obviously, right? But it's just a matter of... most of the stuff, the balance on this cycle is actually, like, pretty good. It's not like we're getting, like, a Shadowlight at level 0. We haven't had that under this new design team. So, whether that be a positive or a negative in your opinion is entirely up to you. But for me, I view it overall as a positive. Yeah, let's talk about the ratings. So, 1.0 is like pretty much is never, actually 1.0 and 1.5 is like never leaves the binder, but like a 1.0 makes me angry about it. You know, like a 1.0, I see 1.0 and I'm thinking, I do not want to frick with this card at all. With a 1.5, I'm like, I could see a case where I might frick with this card, but it's not exactly where we want to be. 2.0 is going to be cards that I think are below rate, but they also potentially can get better in a crazy combo deck, you know? So like a 2.0 is one of those things where it's just like, I don't think the card is good, but I also think that the card can potentially be good in like a crazy combo piece, right? So like you do all these things and the card can pop off, like that's going to be a 2.0, but I don't think that makes the card itself a 2.0. I think that makes like the combo better. 2.5 are cards that I think are average. I'm going to put them like 2.5s will sometimes make it into a level 0 deck, and then they will leave once they are replaced by a better experienced version, right? So like it's like a fine card, but you don't really like go crazy about it, right? And also 2.5s are going to be like a 2.0 where like they get better in a combo deck, but it doesn't take as much work as like a 2.5 as well. 3.0 is just a good card. If I had a goal of making every card in my deck a 3.0, that would be a very achievable goal because there's a lot of 3.0 cards in Arkham. That's kind of like where this is. Like, this is just a card that's like good. If it makes it to scenario 8, I'm not going to be upset either. It's kind of like that little vibe for it. 3.5 is now when we start getting to like the good cards, like the very good cards. We're like, oh, this thing is making me excited. When I draw it, I go, woo! I'm so happy I drew that card. You know, like it's killing it for me. 4.0 is like, yes, this card's great. 4.5 is excellent, and 5.0 is amazing. / close to staple, if not staple. That's kind of like how these two are like bad. This one is like amazing, staple, but like with a little bit of like more likely to be a staple up into the 5s. Do I think anything is going to make it to a 5 in this cycle? I actually don't think of one off the top of my head that I think is going to be a 5 in this cycle. Like, I could be wrong. I haven't spent a lot of time with these cards, but I do think that this this cycle is a little bit more around this area for its power level. Once again, in these batches of cards. But with that, let's start this. Let me get the poll. What? Right. All right, let me just get this for all you. Chat, you're going to have, 1 minute for your rankings here. All right, Crowbar. This is a 3-cost Guardian card. Takes up the hand slot. Item, weapon, tool, melee. As an action, exhaust, Crowbar, investigate. This investigation uses Fist instead of Book. We can exhaust Crowbar to fight. You get +2 Fist for this attack. So this card, to me, is like the epitome of a 3.0. You know? Like, this card is not going to be incredibly amazing, but like by no stretch is this card bad, right? It's a perfect flex card. Like, flexes are going to love playing with Crowbar until the end of time. I've talked a lot about Crowbar because this one's been spoiled, and Spoiler Siege one's a very long time. It's a very nice tool for Guardians. I agree. So Travis, Brent, and I started to actually record our video where we talked about all these cards. And I asked, like, we got their opinions on them because I've been yapping for a while, so I wanted to know what they thought of it. And I'm curious, sorry, I have to get this in. And Travis brought up a good point, like, where it's not exactly fun to... 1, 2, 3, 4, it's not exactly fun for, it's not exactly like a nice space where, like, someone uses another stat, 3.1, all the time, repeatable. But it is nice that Crowbar at least, like, exhausts for that kind of thing, right? Which is super, super good to not eat into too much space. That, like, because I agree with the sentiment, right? I'm not like the biggest fan of every class kind of getting, like, use your good stat for the thing that other classes do. Like, Mystics should be the exception to that rule, right? And I think it's fine because this one exhausts. Like, if this didn't exhaust, I think we would have, like, a design, like a color pie bleeding issue. But because it exhausts, I think this is pretty reasonable for that. So if this effect was going to happen, I'm glad it's happening this way because I think Crowbar is really nice. So I gave it a 3, and chat gave it a 3.1. We're on the same page for this one. Next up, we got the Remington. Model 18, sorry, I have to make the polls. Model 1858. All right. I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes for this one, actually. I think 2 is probably fine. I can yap for a bit. So, 3 cost, uses 2 ammo. As an action, spend 1 ammo, fight, you get +1 Fist for this attack. This attack deals +1 damage. When the Remington model to 1858 leaves play, immediately trigger the above action ability, ignoring all costs. Takes up the hand slot. So there is an upgraded version of this card in the deck, and I think the upgrade of it is really nice. And I think the level 0 version is also a pretty playable weapon. So I'm going to give it a 3. Surprise, there's going to be a lot of 3s. That's just, like, the way it goes. So I think that's one of those things where, like, you'll be running this... What's really nice is I think that it gives... it kind of goes... All right, let me get my thought process here. So let's get the first one in. Where I think the nice thing about this card is that it gives another weapons that Guardians can use and then eventually replace, right? So they can kind of just, like, have, like, more options in their level 0 deck for firearm weapons. Number 2, I like that this card actually both synergizes and desynergizes with the, like, the well-maintained build. But the idea is that this can actually be, especially when we get to the upgraded version, which I think is really nice. So it's like one of those things where this is going to be like the workhorse that is going to then, it's like fine for level 0, and then you're going to be upgrading out of it into the better version, and the upgraded version is much better. So you're saying you take an attack of opportunity often to replace it. You need to have a card in hand to replace it. May I remind everybody about how you can shoot into your allies and they're going to be okay most of the time? I actually, like, don't think it's that bad. So, like, you empty it out. You empty the gun out. And then you just, like, play another gun when someone else has the enemy, and then you just shoot that enemy, right? And if it doesn't happen, you're holding active desperation, and the card, like, is insanely good. I think, yeah, and even then, the attack of opportunity, it also triggers with a lot of Guardian stuff. Like, what if I triggered an attack of opportunity, used my guard dog, and dealt 3 damage to a ghoul, right? Like, we can talk about the downsides of something, but I think you have to also respect there are upsides to these attack of opportunities too that exist within the Guardian class, right? You guys gave it a 2.7. All right. That's one thing I know is that people, they love talking about downsides, but they can never talk about upsides. It's like there's only one way a card can work. You guys, people are just doomers. Don't, that's the thing, right? Like, even the attack of opportunity, even with the attack of opportunity, I actually view that as an upside in the right thing, right? But with 3 ammo, be on par with the 45 automatic. Are you crazy? This costs 3, right? Like, it's cheaper, so that means, like, you can play more things quicker, right? So, like, let's talk about this, right? Let's talk about this. First turn, you have a 45 automatic, a stand together, and a beat cop in your hand, right? You play the stand together, you can play the beat cop and not the 45 automatic, you have to gain a resource. With the beat cop and stand together, right, you can play, and then the Remington, you can play the Remington and the beat cop, right? It's like, again, there's so many limiting factors when it comes to card analysis that I think people don't, like, I think they just stop at one point, right? Yeah, and also sleight of hand is going to be really sick with this card, right? So, no, I think that, I mean, I think like 2.5 is a fair rating for this card because it does get outclassed pretty on, but I think it's a solid weapon for a level 0 deck, and I think that, like, you know, there's a lot of tricks that you can do with it to make this card, like, super reliable. One in the chamber is nice. Yeah, see, there's so many things now to synergize with this card that that's why I'm giving it a 3. And I think all of you guys who gave it lower are wrong and huff and paint. All right, the Book of War. I wish I could just, like, repeat previous poll. But I cannot. Is it okay to ignore Sleight of Hand's taboo for the level 4 version? No. Just play without taboo and then you can. 4 cost. Takes up the hand slot, uses 3 secrets. It's an item tome. As a reaction, after play a tactic event, spend 1 secret and exhaust the Book of War. When your turn ends, return that event to your hand. So, I think this card's really cool because it does a few things for the Guardian class that they don't really have, which is 1, recursion, which acts as a form of card draw, which is really nice because then you can basically just draw your best tactic events over and over and over. I think this card does have some relevant downsides where, like, it costs 4. It takes up a hand slot, so, like, I don't think that's a downside in the sense that, like, I don't think that's a downside in the sense that, like, because you're using the events to fight and deal the damage, right? But I think if this was a secret card, this wouldn't take up a hand slot, just being real with everybody. So I think this card, because of that, is going to be a little bit more niche in where it's used. It's not just like a broadly good card, but I do think this card is a powerful effect. But it's hard for me to shake that 4 cost. I think this is going to be, like, really fun in, like, Joe Diamond and Roland, where you can refill the secrets. I think obviously Carson Sinclair is going to be a really good use for it. I'm going to give this card a 3.5. I think I'm going to give this card a 3.5 for my initial rating. I think it's nice, though. I think it's a very fun design, and I think it's like a really cool. And I think that what's most exciting for me about this card is that it is going to open up a new thing for Nacho, like a new deck that he's able to play with. And then yeah, also, like, with people, like, who can also recur this in the form of York, I think is also super duper exciting. Okay, looks like you guys are giving this a 4. If I had to do some quick math, people giving it 2s are crazy. 3.7 is the final rating. I think that's pretty fair. Like, if I could give this like a 3.75, I could, but that's crazy talk. So we're going to be giving it the 3.5 for this one. But I think it's a very nice card. All right. We have Primed for Action. What does this card even do? Zero cost event, play only as your first action. Play your firearm asset from your hand, reducing its cost by 2. Then, you may play an upgrade event from your hand, attaching it to that asset if able. So this is like, stick to the gun. It's like, no, not stick to the gun, sorry, this is like uncage the gun. It's uncage the soul, but the gun version. This card annoys me. There's 0 upgrades in this box. The core set to use with it. You gotta go outside, brother. You gotta go outside. I'm sorry. If that annoys you, I got bad news for you. Okay. So let's talk about like the different levels of this card to help us determine where we think the power level for this card is, right? So would I play this card if it just was uncage the gun? So just like I could play a firearm asset reducing its cost by 2. For me, no. But that's because I mostly would just rather play like Stand Together, because it kind of does the same thing, but then that's 2 actions. So this is like, it does compress the economy a bit. I mean, playing an upgrade from it is really nice. I mean, but also like, yeah, it's a greater late game card as you get upgrades. But I mean, at the same time, like reducing the cost of a card of a firearm by 2, right? Like obviously less impressive than Uncage the Soul, but we all agree that Uncage the Soul is a pretty playable card, right? All right, let's see what you got. 1, 2, 3. You guys are giving it a 2.8. What am I going to give this MFer? I think, I mean, like I said, I think like Uncage the Soul is a good card. And I mean, like the idea is that you're playing this, you're playing this in an upgrade deck, or it beats with the 1/1 card that lets you play 3 things. You mean Ever Vigilant 1? I think they're different. I think they fill different holes. So I'm torn. I mean, I'm hovering at a 3 for this card, I think. I don't necessarily agree it competes with it. Also, like, I think we should all be aware that the conversation about card evaluation is going to be changing soon, so I'm kind of just looking at this card in the vacuum of itself. Soon we won't need to talk about all these other cards when we're talking about current stuff as well. We have to talk about both. I'm still not ready to get there yet. I still have to figure out how I'm going to approach that. I'm going to give this card a 3. I think it's good. I think it's a good card. Again, I think like Uncage the Soul is good, and worst case this is just an Uncage the Soul. Like compressing an action in the Guardian class is actually really nice. So even if I don't play the upgrade, and if I do get to play the upgrade, I mean like there are good upgrades, right? Like even just the custom modifications is going to go hard with this, and a lot of the time that's what I'm like mulling for, right? Like my only issue is that most upgrades are fast. I don't know what to say to you guys. I don't know what to say to you guys. I'm sorry, I don't. Let's keep this going before I get mad. All right, ready for anything. This is all right, let me get the poll in first. right, 1 cost event, Spirit Bold, play only as your first action, draw 1 card, 2 cards instead if you drew an enemy this round, then heal 1 horror. This action does not provoke attacks of opportunity. So I think that this card is fine. I'm going to give this one our first 2.5 of the day. I'm going to give this card our first 2.5. So I think it's actually like less, I'm going to say that this card is like, gonna be fine in certain investigators, right? Like, I mean, even already in chat, we're seeing such a difference between people's response to this card. I have someone saying it reads better than plays. Someone says it's pretty great overall. Does drawing weakness enemies count? If you can draw a weakness enemy before your first action, I don't see why it wouldn't count. But we're also like, why are we asking these questions? But I feel like this card is actually like a combo card, right? I feel like this isn't a card that we don't actually put in any Guardian deck, right? It's like one of those things where you need to either have event synergy, like in the form of the pictured investigator Marian Tavares, right? Or alternatively, it needs to, I think, like, you need to be someone who has, like, low horror, or you are specifically drawing enemies, right? Like, if I'm playing, like, Zoe Samaras, and I'm playing, like, On the Hunt with my, like, my cross, then, yeah, I'm gonna play Ready for Anything, right? But, like, it's not necessarily, like, a card that I'm gonna just always put in my Guardian decks, right? Like, and this is also something that Travis brought up, like, versus this to Second Wind, which is very similar to, right? Like, the thing is that when you draw an enemy, you have to solve that enemy, right? When you draw a Treachery, you don't have to do anything. You guys are going to give it a 3.2. That's our first major difference between the two of us. We've been pretty close otherwise. Just putting the Guardian decks as already on my table is done with it as a relatively effectively lower deck size. Yeah, I mean, like, that's entirely fair too. I think you people have to also remember that I am not a genius. I am just saying my own things. I'm not trying to one-up you or prove that I am right or wrong. I am just saying my own stuff. But yeah, so I do think that this card is going to get like the full value. You want to be able to, like, I think you want to be drawing 2 cards. I think just cycling through only really works in, like, 4 players, right? I think, like, at their time, like, actions, like, I couldn't do that in 2 players, but I think in 4 player, that's pretty fair, right? But yeah, I think that, like, I think the card's fine. It could actually, like, I mean, I think it depends, again, like, the 2.5, it depends entirely on where, did I put this in here? Yeah, I did. It depends entirely on where, the rest of your deck is looking. Okay, next up we got Hard Boiled, and I'm gonna be honest with you, chat, I'm pretty hyped on this card. I think this card's a pretty fun design, but is the card good? That's another question. So Hard Boiled is an innate skill. Let's go, Silas Marsh. Fist Wild. And it gains Fist Wild for each successful attack you perform this round. Successful attack, so not just any attack, it has to be successful. And max 1 committed per skill test. So I think this card is also a combo card, right? Goes into 2 decks. What decks do you think there are? Because I think there's actually more than you think. So tell me what those 2 decks are, and I'm going to see if there's some that I'm thinking that you are missing. Because already chat said 3 decks as well, and then none of them are the decks that I'm thinking of. I think this card is a little bit niche, but I think the design on this card is interstellar. something Travis pointed out that I thought was really cool. It's going to be really nice for both Silas Marsh and Hank Sampson in Dark Horse decks for their fire axes, because it essentially gives them like 2 activations, like 2 resources from their fire axe to use on the last one. And I think that's like a really nice card to add to the Dark Horse thing to make it like also really good for that as well. What am I going to give it? I'm probably going to give it a 2.5 though, because I still think like it's just a skill, right? It doesn't actually help you win the game, but I like the idea of using it defensively or letting someone else fight the boss as well. So I'm going to give this card a 2.5, I think, for mine. And let's see what you guys are giving it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. You guys are going 2.8. So yeah, pretty close on that one. Pretty close. Yeah, it's also pretty good for removing Frozen in Fear. It does give potentially 3 wilds, depending on how things go. I mean, you have to 2 wilds because you lose one for the thing, but it can help someone else if they're Frozen in Fear, which is really nice. But yeah, that's where I think this card is going to shine, and the ability to also tech and help other people. All right, 26 minutes for the Guardian cards. Sounds about right. Let's get to the Secret cards. Alton O'Connell. Alright, this MFer is a 3-cost ally, takes up the ally slot, of course. 2-1 for Soak, you get +1 foot. After you succeeded a skill test by exactly 3, place 1 resource on Alton O'Connell as evidence. As a Lightning Bolt, exhaust Alton O'Connell and spend X evidence to discover 1 clear location where X is the shroud value of your location. So notably, this MFer does not exhaust on his top action. And that's pretty neat. And like that's pretty neat. So you can potentially trigger this multiple times a turn. I think the theory is that the stuff that helps you succeed by 3 does exhaust, right? So like that's when you kind of like run out of stuff. But the question is, and this is something that Travis brought up when we were talking about this card, and I think it's an interesting point, is this guy just another Charles West III? Like, is it going to be something that, like, does it actually matter? Like, is he actually going to trigger enough for him to be worth it? And, like, are you better with just, like, literally, like, if you don't care about the foot, are you better with, like, literally any other ally, right? I like this guy most as, like, a level 0 Lola Santiago for me, right? And I think that, like, for me, what I want to do is I want to have shroud reduction abilities and just use him to get tests done, like, get clues for free, right? Like, basically just have, like, I now have a Lola Santiago that I can use to, like, scum 0 shroud locations that I make 0 shroud, or alternatively, like, 1 shroud locations if I make them lower, right? Yeah, so, like, I'm torn on this guy, because I think that, like, what I would do with him is not what normally would be the use case with this guy. So I'm trying to, like, separate the two, right? I'm trying to separate the two. Let's see what you guys are giving him to, because the poll just ended. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4. Perfect 3.0 from chat. A perfect 3.0. They stuck the landing. No splash. I mean, a 3.0 is actually a bad rating for a dive, but that's okay. I am going to give this guy a 2.5, I think. I think he's fine. I think he's fine. So I'm going to give him a 2.5. I told you, yeah, most things are going to be living in this area, which is, I mean, honestly, a good place for level 0 cards to be, right? At least in my opinion. Yeah. So, like, that's the kind of thing that I'm kind of, like, stuck on. Like, how much is this guy actually going to get enough evidence for his bottom ability to matter? So that's, like, where I'm personally kind of stuck, right? Like, for his bottom ability to matter, I think you need to be cheating. Like, you need to be, like, taking advantage of his bottom ability. Because I think that, like, if he gets you, like, 1 clue, like, let's be real, like, if this guy gets you 1 clue every 3 or 4 turns, that's a Blood of Thoth, right? Like, that's a rate that we're not happy with. So I feel like in order to do that, you need to be doing more and you need to be working around it. So he's kind of like a combo card, but is that combo actually worth it? Like, is it better to just play an ally that makes like your book better, your intellect better, right? And you can just like do better that way. Like, that's kind of like where I'm stuck on this guy. So I feel like, to me, he's at his peak when you are fricking around with his ability. So that's kind of like where I'm living with Alton O'Connell. All right, now we have Artistic Inspiration, which I know a lot of people are pretty... It's a pretty contentious card due to the design space, but I think the design space actually makes sense for the Seeker class. 2 cost, level 0. It's a talent. Limit 1 per investigator. Uses 1 inspiration. As a lightning bolt, exhaust Artistic Inspiration. Discard 1 card from your hand. Replenish 1 inspiration on this card. After revealing chaos tokens of the skill test you're performing, spend 1 inspiration. You get +1 or -1 skill value for this test. So, I think this card is a good card, but I do think that it's going to be run less than I have seen people assume it's going to be run. Like, I think that this card is, it's only playable if you have Seeker and you are playing like Survivor Discard. So I can see this in George. I can see this in Min and Daryl. Because the question is like, okay, like here's the hard reality, right? Like, if you need to like, because like the theory is that every card in your deck is half a lucky, right? Like, every card of your deck is half a lucky, where people are seeing, like, why I want to run this, right? Because if you don't care, like, unless you're playing Science as well. Like, Science, like, the Precise is, like, another place where you would play this card. I did miss that earlier, right? But, like, if you're just discarding a card for lucky, why are you bad at taking tests, right? Like, why do you suck? Why is your deck bad, right? So, like, if you want to have every card in your deck be half a lucky, like, why are the cards in your deck so bad that you're also failing all these tests that you need these cards, right? And like, if the idea is that you only need to trigger it 3 times and then like, that's okay, I just had 3 pocket luckies, is that actually good enough to be an action and those things? Like, did those tests actually matter? Or are you just getting value out of those cards because you feel like you have to because you put this card into your deck and you're essentially like tricking yourself into thinking that it was worth it, right? It's like you're held hostage by the card when you put it into your deck. And to me, that reads like kind of more of a trap for deck building than it would otherwise. Check gave it a 3.4. Because I feel like in order to play this card, you need to either be like taking advantage of one of the 2 halves of the cards. Because that's kind of where ARKHAM is at this point, right? You can make it a +2 or a -2, right? No. Well, you can get +2 or -1, right? But it's like, to me, I think you need to be taking advantage of one of the 2 half of the cards. So you either need to be taking advantage of the discard synergy or the science synergy for this to really pop off, I think. With all that said, I do think that this card is very similar to Book of War. I'm going to give it a 3.5. I think this card is good. I think it is a good card. But I do think that it needs to be like in the right deck for it to really be worth it. And then otherwise, like, are you just running this because of the value you think it gives you as opposed to the value it actually gives you, right? That's kind of where I am with this card. But we're very close again, chat. I'm a 3.5, you're a 3.4. We're basically neighbors. I play with precision, yes, but it's also a good way to jump cards if you're going over hand size for value. I don't necessarily agree with that statement, though, because why am I going over hand size for value when I'm just wasting cards then, right? Like, I know the theory is I'm not wasting cards, but even then, every time you're discarding cards to hand size, you're probably making a mistake while you're playing, right? Like, why aren't you using those cards for other things? I know, like, the theory is that you can do this with artistic inspiration, right? In George, that does happen constantly. Chat. George is different. George is a discard synergy investigator. Of course you discard to hand size for George. It's literally in his kit. It's literally in his kit. All right, let's move on. Dial of the Ancients. These ones are always a bit strange to talk about the level 0 versions of the card. But why don't we talk about, I think, so I'm going to look at this one, like, how easy is this, how easy is this thing to translate? That's how we're going to look at the level 0 version. 3 cost accessory slot. After an enemy location evaded, place 1 charge. Then, if there are 4 more charges, record your campaign log that you've calculated the Day of Reckoning. These one always suck to talk about, right? Because it doesn't actually do anything. It also doesn't give you an upside. Normally they give you like some sort of something. It's like get a kiss from like from Yog-Sothoth, right? Like Yog-Sothoth comes down and gives you a little peck on the cheek, right? I mean, I'm going to give it a 2. I'm going to give it a 2. It does nothing on its own. I tried this in Lucius in the Forgotten Age. Couldn't do it two-handed. Like, you couldn't translate it. That seems crazy that you couldn't translate it in the Forgotten Age. With Lucius, no less. I think this one's actually, like, kind of... I mean, to me, if I was putting this in my deck, I think it'd be pretty easy to translate because, like, you don't have to go out of your way. Needing to find it, then trying to get it done. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to mulligan pretty hard for... If you're going to be translating this, you have to mulligan for it pretty hard, right? Like, I would probably go for, like, a 9 or a 10 to try to find this if it was in my... I think that's, like, so important if you don't have a good way to search for it. Just go hard on card draw. Oh, no. Jack gave it a 1.8. Chat, we're very close this year. Normally we have, like, weird outliers, but this year we've been very close to one another. Yeah, no, but these ones don't really count. We can't really talk about these cards. You don't really, like... You don't play these cards to put them in your deck. You play these cards to upgrade them and get them out of your deck. So they're always just like the gross spot when it comes to the card rankings. All right, Forensics Kit. This is a 3 cost. Actually, here, let me get the poll up. We just talked about this card on Wednesday and I forget what it does. 3 cost, takes up a hand slot, item tool, science, uses 4 supply, spend 1 supply, investigate for this investigation, you may use foot instead of book, and you get +1 skill value if you succeed, and there's an exhausted enemy or location, heal 1 horror. So, like, Keimani is going to play this card. Yeah, and Lucius would. Yeah, Lucius would look at playing it. You may use foot instead of book, and you get +1 skill value. Compare this to Thieves Kit, where you use your book instead of your foot. So you use your foot instead of your book, you may. And then if you succeed, you gain a resource. I like that so much more. I need to remind myself. Let's get ARKHAM Build open. We should have a tab over here for when we need to look up cards. Thieves Kit. And it is 6 supplies. Yeah, I think I'm going to give this card a 2. I just don't think it's worth it. I think there's cases where it is worth it, but I think this card is actually pretty poopy. Dice Gods, you can't hear me say this, but that is a really nice thing. Like, I think I said that when I brought it up with Travis and Bryn too. It's nice for Lucius because it does also heal his recurring horror from his weakness, right? So, like, things like that are going to be nice for him. I don't think that makes the card itself better, but I think that it definitely makes the card better for Lucius, right? So I think that's a very good point for this. Again, he is 6. I think he's an 8/6. But I think this, I just look at this card and I'm just like, even in the people who can run it, I think I'd rather find other things instead. All right. Let's see what you guys all give it. A 2.2. Again, we're like neighbors. We're very close this year. Our only big swing was Ready for Anything. That's the only thing we really had like crazy different with one another. And I guess Alton O'Connell, but that's man. I don't know if I'm just... No, it's never happened before one of these. It's so exciting. It's so exciting. So yeah, 2.0 for that one, I think. All right. And then we got Mortar and Pestle. Bing. All right. Mortar and Pestle. This is a 2-cost asset, item tool science. It uses 0 resources, and resources on Mortar and Pestle may be spent to pay for spell cards. As a reaction, if you discover one or more clues, exhaust Mortar and Pestle and place 1 resource on it from the token pool. So I think this card is actually better than the Council of Click Economy lead it to believe. And I think that it's like one of those things where sorry, I'm gonna front load this with my rating. It's either gonna be a 2 or a 2.5. Like, I think the card's fine, but I have to decide which fine it's gonna live on. But like, it's like one of those things where this was a trap that we fell into for Dr. Milan back in the day, right? Where we focused on how long it took for him to pay you back. Like, yes, Dr. Milan gives you a book icon, right? So like, that is better than what this does. So I'm not saying this is on the same level as that, but I'm just saying, like, this was a trap that we fell into that I think that at this point now in ARKHAM, before we get into the current environment where our conversation has to change, the idea of click economy is less valuable than it was back in the day, because now this is a combo card, right? So like, the idea is that if you play 2 of these, every time you play a Read the Signs, you've paid for that Read the Signs, right? Like, and if you loop it back, you get that, you basically have built your engine, right? So like, when deck building has changed from how do I load my deck with the best cards, and it has become instead, how do I build the best engine, right? Like, that is I think the more accurate question. Chat's given it a 2.6. So like, that's one, like that to me is like a kind of the thing that is changing the evaluation on Mortar and Pestle for me anyway, right? Because like, I look at this card and my first thought was not how many turns or like how many like triggers do I need for this card to get its value back. Because, like, you don't need, like, the way you get the value back from this card is the exact same as Dr. Milan, by winning the game, right? Like, if it was, for example, like something, I'm not even going to give an example because it's unfair to the card, but, like, if it was an effect that you had to go out of your way to do, and, like, didn't actually win the game by doing, I think this card would be much worse. But because you have to activate it, right? Like, you activated by winning the game, like, that's good, right? And I think this card is going to be like a combo piece. It's not going to be something you just put into any deck. Like, specifically, as I said, like, yeah, right? Like, I have to pay 4 of these. I have to pay 4 resources to get my Read the Signs loop infinite. But at that point, I've done it, right? Even just having 1... paying for half of it is a good step until I get to the other half. So it's like one of those things where like the conversation is less about how do I make this card back its value, but rather what value does this card actually provide, right? And I do think that this card actually does play better than it reads. I agree completely, because I did play it and I was able to use it for all my spell cards as Trish. And like, that was kind of sick. I'm going to give it a 2.5. I'm going to give it 2.5. All right, now it's time for everybody's favorite Oculus Mortem, the camera that takes photos of the dead. 3 cost, takes up the hand slot, item tool occult, uses 0 evidence. After you seal, cancel, ignore a chaos token, exhaust Oculus Mortem, place 1 evidence on it. And as a reaction, when enemy attacks an investigator location, spend 1 evidence and exhaust Oculus Mortem. Discover 1 clue your location. If that enemy has the Geist trait, deal 1 damage to it. So this card's kind of fricked up, isn't it? This card is kind of like, this is such a flavor-first design. And I'm not saying that as a negative. I think this card is actually like a really fun design. But it does not make it good. I don't know. I think I'm going to give it a 2. I think it's like playable, but I don't think it's good by any means. I think it's like a fine inclusion, and like if you're canceling, ignoring, and like doing that, what does it actually do? Because then you have to trigger the attack of opportunity. My main concern with the camera is how often are people actually being attacked outside of Daniela? Yeah, so like this goes back to my old statement as well, right? This is actually even going back to the rating for this card. I think that if you build around this deck as a team, this card as a team, you can do good things with it, right? But you need to be with someone who is building a Soak deck or a Thorns deck, right? Like who's someone who is going to be taking damage. So that could be Daniela, that can be Tommy, that can be Yorick, right? I feel like this is like a team combo card as opposed to just like a general card that you play in any deck. So that to me is like, and I think it's going to perform well in those decks, right? Like Free Clues is really nice. And this thing is actually very easy to get evidence on it, right? But I think that even with all that, it's not super impressive. Sorry, 5. 2.2. Chat, again, we're just neighbors. Sorry, I gave this one a 2. So I gave this one a 2.5. I didn't put my rating in. There we go. Duke said there's a reason they campaign for that many attack interactions in the set. Oh, no, definitely. You could definitely see that. There's so many dodges and like effects like that in here. So it makes sense that there's going to be something that cares about it. Yeah, no, but I think this card is just like a flavor win, but I don't think it's particularly a function win. Oh, sorry, did I go back? I did, didn't I? I did it on the screen earlier. Okay, let's go on to Uncanny Specimen. And we have a more important question to ask than is this card good, and that's would you drink the bottle? All right, Uncanny Specimen, 1 cost asset, Myriad Fast, up to 3 Uncanny Specimen, take up 1 Arcane slot, takes up the Arcane slot, because that's what the card says it does. As a reaction, when a skull, cultist, tablet, or squid is revealed during a skill test or location, discard Uncanny Specimen. Cancel that Chaos Token to the Chaos Bag, and reveal a new one. If this test is successful, draw 1 card. So I think this card is actually kind of sick. I think this card is actually kind of sick. It asks so little of you. And like it can have some very positive interactions depending on the campaign or the scenarios that you're playing. Yeah, it is. It's just a fast resource draw card, and you can potentially like scum a test out of it. You can scum a win out of it. Notably also, I think there is the cancel token synergy, right? Which, as we know, works is a positive with some of the cards we just saw, right? But I'm like, I don't think this card is just like, I don't think it's like super strong or anything, but I think this card actually is going to play pretty well, and I'm going to give this one a 3. I think this card is actually like pretty legit for a lot of decks. You can just put it in there, and you can just like have level 0, and then you can like upgrade out of it over time. Because like, even if I'm just running one of these as things settle, like I'm not gonna be too bothered by it. let's see you guys. It's good filler to reach deck size. I agree, but I also think that this card might have some strange synergies that we don't even like know. We can't even like see until we start doing things. Effects like this, like there might be something that just pops up and you're like, wait a minute. This is actually kind of like, I'm kind of loving it. You guys gave it a 3.2. Okay. 14 threes though. Which I think is very fair. Like I said, like I think this is just like a perfect just good card. All right. Correlate all its contents. This is a one-cost event. One of these cards we've had forever. It feels like we've had, we had this card since I think like what, August? Investigate. You may cancel the first chaos token revealed for this skill test, return to the bag, and reveal a new one. If you succeed at the skill test, place one charge or secret on an asset controlled by an investigator location. If you succeed by exactly 1 or 3, place 2 charges or secrets on that asset instead. I mean, the card's fine, right? I don't think it's particularly great. I like it as like it. I think they've done a good job with all the cards in this where like I can see like 2 archetypes where I would want to play this card, right? I think I am going to give it a 2.5 though. I think the card is fine. I don't think it's particularly great, but I do think the card itself is fine. And I actually don't have too much to say, but I still have to kill a minute while chat gets their votes in. I definitely think if we're looking at just level 0 cards, Guardian is definitely outpacing Seeker cards. I think Guardian had a really nice cycle this expansion. Big Enraptured with this. That's the crazy thing about Big Enraptured. You don't even need this shit. just play Big Enraptured and like go nuts with it. Just instead of playing Correlate all its contents, play Practice Makes Perfect, and then like you're gonna be like a literal god. And it's going to be incredible. Yeah, so I don't have too much to say about this one. We've had it forever, and I've kind of just been like, yeah, this card's fine. It'll be good. It'll be fine. So, I'm gonna just live with it there. And let's see what chat gives it. Looking like it's gonna be around a 3, maybe like a 3.2. All right. 3.1 from chat. 3.1. Okay. Well, we're not exactly schmoovin'. But we are going to go to the rogue class now. And we're going to start with the Luger. A very exciting card. Okay. I think I'm going to change the timer to a 1 on this. Because worst case, I can go quicker. Alright. The Luger. Takes up a hand slot, uses 2 ammo, exhausts Luger, and spend 1 ammo, fight. You get +1 fist with attack. This is a lightning bolt, by the way. You can also spend a resource to replenish all ammo on the Luger and ready it. So here's why the average calculator is 7 columns, and it makes me feel uneasy. I just love the number 7, you know? It brings me good luck. I think this card's good. I think it's a good card. But the problem is, I think it's like less good than we think it is. Because we only talk about it in like 3 places that I can really see. Tony, Leo, and Michael McGlynn. I was like, Leo was the last one in my head earlier. That's why I was like, I'm forgetting somebody. But the thing is, like, it actually I think is relevant. I think it's like. So the awkward thing is like when you have a lot of enemies in front of you and you need to shoot and kill all of them, right? Wow. Chad loves this card. Actually 3.7, it's less high. I think again we're very close. I'm torn between a 3 or a 3.5 for this card. So the thing is, I think that Artistic Inspiration and Book of War are both better than it. But I think, for example, the Remington is better than the Model 1858. I'm gonna give it a 3. I'm gonna give it a 3. I thought about it, but like, so I think one of those things that like, yeah, it's a free bullet, but then like you still have one of your hand slots being used for the Luger. And then there's like one of those things where, yeah, my other hand slot's like a Switchblade in Tony, right? And then like I'm using the Luger's free actions, which is really nice, right? But like, are there other ways for me to get there, you know? I think what's most exciting to me is combining Book of War with the Luger and being like a weird event-based fighter deck where you have the Luger to just like pop enemies as they go. Is that going to be good? I don't think so, because you have to also do this, but like that's kind of the thing that's like most tickling the Johnny or Timmy part of my brain, right? But I do think that the card is good. I think the Luger is a good card, but I think it's like a little bit like when I played a Tony deck with it, it turned out to be a little more awkward, but in all fairness to that deck, my only weapons in the deck were 2 copies of the Luger. And I could definitely optimize it. But I also just see the same thing, right? Where it's like, why would I use the Luger when I could just like have a Switchblade? And then like, you know, have like a gun that deals 2 damage, right? But I think the card's good. I think the card's good. And I think as Bryn says, it's going to be nice for the like ammo spending events as well. It's nice to have a card that like you can reload with less hassle than the Colt. Arkham Librarian, 33 months at the Golden Table. Thank you for your support. Good card though. All right, Robert Castaigne. This guy is a 4-cost ally, soaks for 2 and 2. You get +1 fist as an action. Discard a firearm asset that takes up one of your hand slots from your hand and exhaust Robert Castaigne. Resolve a fight ability on the discarded asset, ignoring all costs. This does not provoke attacks of opportunity. Yeah, I think obviously his upgraded version is one of the better cards in the cycle. I'm going to give it a 3 though, because I think he is also just a legit card. So I'm going to give this guy a 3. What do I like about him is he gives you +1 fist. And he lets you, like, take actions. Like, I think he's, like, less good, right? Like, I think he's, like, less good. Like, you want his upgraded version, like, ASAP. But he's just a 4-cost, 2/2 soak that gives you +1 fist. Like, that's just a good rate, you know? And, like, you will trigger his ability occasionally, right? Like, I can see it, like, you're just like, okay, well, I have this gun. I don't really need to play it. I just want to fire it. You know, it's like one of those things. Lonnie into upgraded Robert. I think I would just still play Robert. Because then I just don't need to think. $3.7. How does that work with the Remington? I don't think it does. Do you think Robert would be better if he discarded the firearm from play instead? Oh yeah, I think that would make him much better. But I think this is a better version of a level 0 card. And the upgraded version is the one that's really interesting. Like, the upgraded version is a very powerful ability. Yeah, I like him. I think he's going to be very fun to play. He's going to be a very spicy MFer. Good with mob connections. Yeah, all the quiet synergies that are popping up when you see the full box is a really exciting thing about the box here. How are we looking at? Look at this. Like I said, everything's going to be living in like a 3. Just get used to it, kid. Surprising number of cards. I'm thinking that'd be fun to play. I don't think that's surprising. I think the design team is... I think the biggest fault that people have with the design team, from what I've seen, that people aren't saying, but I can see in the sentiment, is that the cards aren't, like, strong enough. We're used to, like, the Scarlet Keys, Edge of the Earth. To go from Edge of the Earth and Scarlet Keys to Hemlock and Drowned City, right? The power level has dropped significantly, but I think ultimately it's better for the game with that way. And I look at Robert and I'm like, yeah, he's good. But he's not like... Even the upgraded version I think is very powerful, but it's not like disgustingly good. And I think it's better that way, even though it is less exciting that way. My favorite art, to the person who left a comment being like, is her face AI? No, this is real art. You can tell because there is, you can tell that there is intention in the things that are happening here. All right, String Along. 3 cost, asset, talent. As a reaction, when you attempt to evade an enemy, exhaust String Along. For this evasion attempt, you get +1 skill value and the enemy gains alert. If you succeed, draw 1 card and do not engage from that enemy. That's funny. I have beef with String Along. I had to watch my friend get a Pit Viper alert yesterday, get himself poisoned. You know what? That's you gotta respect the cojones to use this card on a Pit Viper. That's how you know they're a gamer. That's how you know they're a gamer. I think this card is good. How good do I think it is? It's going to be a 3 or a 3.5. I mean, like... It's one of those things where, like, there's a lot of quiet synergy that's slowly becoming louder and louder within the rogue class that makes this card... Chat's giving it a 2.8. So obviously with the parlay stuff, this card's really good, right? I think like, so like it makes like the parlay stuff really nice to have an enemy around all the time. For people like Keimani, having another form of pickpocketing is going to be really nice, right? But like this is synergy for like the I want an enemy in play, and this allows me to have an enemy in play. I mean, also like it's just free value, right? Where you just like again get resources. Well, it's cards, but it is a resource technically, for just playing the game. Sorry, I didn't give it a 2.8. You guys gave it a 2.8. I haven't given it a score yet. With a black market, I played a Keimani with Finn, and Keimani played one of Finn's pickpocketing, so Keimani had 3 pickpocketings in play. And let me just tell you, the more that you can get, the better. Stealth kind of does the same if you just want the enemy there. It absolutely does not. Stealth does not solve the enemy for that round for anybody else at your location. It still attacks you too. The enemy still attacks you with stealth because it's only until the end of the round, until the end of your turn. So you're still going to get attacked by that enemy, right? So yeah, that's the thing. So like I think that like stealth is obviously very good in Keimani. But I think what this card is nice about it is actually like solve the enemy while also giving you value and keeping the enemy there if you do want the enemy there. And apparently if you want to be a baller, you can use it on a Pit Viper. I'm going to give this card a 3, I think. I could see me saying I'm wrong about this one, but it reminds me a lot of level 0 pickpocketing, and I'd probably give level 0 pickpocketing a 3 and give the upgraded pickpocketing a 4. So I'm going to give this one a 3. Where's the party? Well, every Tuesday and Friday on stream, starting at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Usually go until about 1 Mountain Time. All right. Where's the party? This is a parlay. Search the encounter. It's a 0 cost event, sorry. Trick and improvised. Search the encounter deck and discard power for non-elite enemy and spawn it exhausted and engage with you. Draw cards equal to that enemy's combined damage and horror values. Huh. I think this card's good. It spawning engaged is so important. It's like so important. That was the thing. I was so high on kicking the Hornet's Nest. But I think ultimately, like, I found it more awkward to play, at least in like lower player counts. Imagine these cards are like bonkers in higher player counts. All right. And just give it a 4.2. Is my furnace going right now? It is. I'm gonna give this card a 3. I think this, like, realistically, I guess it kind of depends as well, like, how are you taking advantage of that enemy? Right? Like, how are you taking advantage of the enemy? Is it by parlaying? Is it by, like, Michael McGlenn and using your guns to make ammo, right? Is it other effects that you can potentially take advantage of with it? I think that's going to be a lot of things that are going to change for that kind of stuff. I kind of like it in Keimani. Javier Altman, 7 months at the Golden Table. Full counter deck search is great for anyone. Yeah, I mean, that's totally fair. I might be sleeping on it a bit. Like, just be able to grab the VP enemy out of the deck when you want to and then just kill it. Mandy searching 2 enemies. Amen. So I guess that's, like, changing, right? Like, I guess the idea is, you know what? I think you got me. I'm going to put this at a 3.5. I think you got me. Just being able to tutor out the elite enemy. Sorry, the VP enemy, not the elite enemy. You can't grab the elite enemy. But being able to tutor out the VP enemy. You don't risk your squishies drawing the VP stuff? I don't think that's a concern. If my squishy drew the VP stuff and I'm not there to help them fight it, that's on me. So, like, I think to me that's the thing, right? Because I'm not looking at this card as card draw anymore, right? Like, the card draw is fine, but I think what's more interesting to me is the ability to grab the VP enemy when I want to grab the VP enemy. Yeah, Chad, you convinced me. You convinced me. You've had worse. Okay, I have to put my bias on the design for this card aside because I do not like this card. 0 cost event. Commits for brain, foot. It's a favor. Fast. Play when an investigated location or connecting location is dealt damage in a horror. That investigator may spend up to 3 resources. For each resource spent, that investigator cancels 1 damage or 1 horror just dealt. The thing is, they know this card is bad because they put so many icons on it for a level 0 card. For the class that rarely gets multi-icons. The flavor on this card is such a whiff. Yeah, let's see what they're giving it. 2. Chat's giving it a 2.1. Okay, I'm gonna give this one our first 1.5. I can't see a place where I'm taking this out of the binder. So, like, it's one of those things. I'm going to give it a 1.5. So this is one of those things where this is not what I care about as the rogue. One of those things I just don't care about as a rogue, right? Like, I care more about the things that help me solve my frozen and fears. I guess, like, it retroactively stops a rotting remains, But even then, like, I have so many other tools that I would rather use to just, like, proactively stop it, because then I don't have to spend an action to stop my Mythos card. Oh, I guess it's not a math action. This is not an action to do this. This is healing when you would take damage. But, like, the thing about, like, Savant and all that is that it stops Frozen in Fear or Rotting Remains. This is basically just Rotting Remains. I think also it's a flavor whiff. Like, I like the mirror to the other one, but it just does not. It just doesn't do it for me. Let's get to a card that does do it for me, and that's Bum Rush. Start poll. Alright, Bum Rush. Bum's Rush, sorry. This is a 2-cost event. It's a tactic and a trick, evade. Add your fist value to your skill value for this evasion attempt. If you succeed by 2 or more, deal that enemy 1 damage. If that enemy is non-elite, you may move it to a connecting location. So I think this card is actually quietly better than it seems. Because I think a lot of people see this card and they just think Trick Shot, right? Or sorry, Cheap Shot. They just think Cheap Shot. And it's like, Cheap Shot's not great, so this card's probably not that great. But this card actually gives you, what, 3 turns? Like, sorry, because it evades the enemy, it moves it to a connecting location. So you're getting like 2 turns out of it from like enemy management standpoint. And being able to send the enemy somewhere else is like really good. I don't think the card's great. I'm going to give it a 3. But I do think this card is actually like pretty legit. If I would give Cheap Shot a 2.5, I think this is better than Cheap Shot. Chat, you guys love it, and I'm here for it. .5, I think, is a very fair rating. It's Slip Away and Cheap Shot. Exactly, right? I think the card's pretty sweet. Now, do you know what's also pretty sweet, chat? The art on this card, am I right? Well, there's some weird niche situations where it breaks the game. Most of the stuff that cares about elite enemies, so there might be, but I think it's unlikely. All right, because we already have those effects in Janae Beauregard, so I think we would have seen it by now. 3-cost event, it's Intimidation, Parlay, choose an enemy location, and test Fist X, where X is the chosen enemy's remaining health. If you succeed, shuffle that enemy into the deck or deal 2 damage to it instead if it's elite. So there's been a recent discussion on our Discord channel about Waylay, a survivor card that we have always been pretty positive on the channel. These are cards that just like defeat enemies. And I wish that these effects were like a little bit harder to trigger or had different conditions and were actually just like a Waylay style thing where you defeat the enemy, right? I think those are a lot more interesting designs than this weird intimidation or persuasion design that exists, you know? I think the Whispers of Doom does defeat the enemy, so like that's a nice thing. We're going to be talking about that card in the very near future. Chat's giving it a 2.2, and honestly, I'm right there with you. I'm going to give this card a 2. I don't think this card's going to see much play. I think there are going to be times you will play this card, but I think overall the card is just not great, but I love this old Arkham Horror LCG art. Yeah. I love this guy. I love Evil Jim Culver. It's got the same hat and everything. It's a good time. All right, next up we got Crack Shot. Crack Shot is the rogue skill of this cycle. The level 0 one anyway. It's practiced, 3 wilds, commit only to a skill test from an ability printed on a firearm or ranged asset you control. I think the card is fine. I'm going to give it a 2.5. There's not much to say. I think the card is fine. It's going to have its home, and in those homes, it's going to be fine, and then you're going to upgrade out of it. Give a firearm to Amanda. Amen. Yeah, aggressively fine is a perfect way of putting it. I'm right there with you on that one. It is just aggressively fine. You look at it and you're just like, yeah, that does the thing it says. I imagine chat's going to be pretty similar on this one. Wow, look at that, chat. 2.5. It's perfect. We rhyme. No one to put this into a deck, but if it showed up in a draft, I'd consider it. Amen, right? Like, exactly. 100%. I think it's nice for the rogues as well. They, like, if you're, like, really wanting it, you can try to pretend you're Tony Morgan if you're, like, Skids O'Toole. Or even Winifred, right? I like it in Winifred, too. I'd run this in Winifred, just because, you know, she likes skills and being able to have something to use my guns with, like kind of a more combat-oriented one. Yep. Okay. Now, chat, be nice. This card has been bullied a lot lately. Poor Blood of Thoth has been getting put through the ringer. But man, it's kind of really funny that you can tell the players that have not been here since the early days, because there's a card that is much worse than this that was revealed back in the day. Flute of the Outer Gods. So it's one of those things that, like, it's become kind of a meme, but it's like, you know, it's like one of those things where it's just like, I mean, like, it's bad. The card's bad, but like, I can see the logic behind it because they're scared of Doom being where it is. But like, we've seen bad cards before. Need a 0 for Blood of Thoth? No, we only go to 1. 1 is 0. Then 5 is 4. Wow, so there's someone out here who loves to stir the pot a little bit, I'll tell you that much. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1.5. That's embarrassing, chat. You guys giving that a 1.5? I'm giving it a 1. Every set usually ends up having a 1. Wonder how they'll try to fix it in FAQ. I don't think they should. I think, honestly, if a card is bad, but someone wants to try to make it work, let them, right? Like, I think that if, like, it's okay if occasionally a janky-ass card that's really bad, but someone goes, like, because there's already people who are like, I want to do something with Blood of Thoth, right? Just because you think yourself a Johnny, but then you see a card that doesn't trigger your Johnny sensibilities because you think it's too bad, that's just the spike side of you telling you that you don't want to build with that Johnny. But there are Johnnies who want to build with this card, right? There are. We've seen them, you know? I think this card is bad. But I also don't think it is an affront to God that it exists. Maybe to Thoth because we killed him. It's affront to that god. But the rate on this card is just, like, obviously so slow. But I don't get the memes about it. Like, it's a bad card, but we've had bad cards before. Like, we had one in the last cycle, Antediluvian Hymn. I think they're both equally bad. Thoth is a plant? No, Thoth is a bird. Have you ever done a list video for flavor? Probably. We've made a lot of list videos. That's because we want a good... I mean, I agree. Like I said, I can see why this card turned out the way it did. And a big reason for that is because I think they're just scared of Doom payoffs being good. But I think it's okay if Doom payoffs are good. Because I think overall, Doom in of itself is an archetype that is high risk. And it should be high reward. But right now, it's just high risk and, like, some reward, you know? Because the person might play... Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bad card. Like, I think that's just, like... But they're bad cards have always existed, and bad cards are going to keep existing, right? So, I'm don't want to even think about Blood of Thoth anymore. I'm done with it. We're going to talk about Breath of the Sleeper instead. Which I also think is not great either. Alright. 3 cost, takes up the accessory slot, it's a spell. Uses 9 charges, an action fight. Use your brain instead of fist for this test. Before revealing chaos tokens, you may spend up to 3 charges. To reveal that many additional chaos tokens, choose one of the revealed tokens to resolve and ignore the rest. If you succeed on the chosen token, matches an ignored token, this attack deals +2 damage. I've seen you before. I've seen you before. Song of the Dead. You can't trick me. You can't trick me with a level 0 Song of the Dead. With all that said, I do think that this card, the design is really cool for this one. I don't think Breath of Sleep is good, but I'm just happy for the 1 bonus clue equals 2 bonus damage conversion. I agree, especially because like the hoops for this one to jump through are harder. So this one, if this one just dealt 2 damage, it would be like, why would I ever play it? Like I think the card is kind of like, what I do like is that it does allow for it does open up another option for like a continual way for Mystics to deal 1 damage, which is really nice, right? Like that's a very nice thing. But it's just a matter of triggering that extra damage and how viable is that. And I think that it's like you need to do a lot of tricks to get there. So I am going to give this one a 2. I am going to give this one a 2. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just kind of like, yeah. Okay, and then we have the sister to that card, which is Eyes of the Dreamer. And I think this one is pretty playable. I don't think it's great, because again, it falls into the same Sixth Sense problem, right? Let me read the card as well. 3 cost asset, takes up the arcane slot, uses 9 charges, and action investigate. Use your brain instead of book for this test. Before revealing chaos tokens to test, you may spend up to 3 charges to reveal that many additional chaos tokens. Choose one of the revealed tokens to resolve and ignore the rest. If you succeed in the chosen token matches an ignored token, discover one additional clue at your location. It's better than the level 0 Sixth Sense? Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's definitely better than the level 0 Sixth Sense. The base action for this one is really strong, but it also is just, as Nick is saying in chat, it's Grotesque Statue, right? If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. But then you just have like a passive drip thing that's going to allow you to get clues. So I'm going to give this one a 3. Because, as always... Wow, chat, look, 1, 2, 3. That means we have to give her a 4, and we have to give this one a 5. It's always better to just get more clues. Like, Book v Shroud, unless you are getting extra actions, is going to cause you to fall behind. And this one eventually, like, will stop doing that. Yeah, I think 3.3 is pretty fair. I don't think she's getting a 4. Oh, no, I have to give her a 4. I don't care what you guys do. I have to give her a 4, and I have to give this one a 5. Just the way the rules work. I was going to say I don't make them, but I do actually make them. But yeah, no, I think this card's definitely playable, and I think it is better than level 0 Sixth Sense, but upgraded Sixth Sense is very good, especially in low player counts. So, yeah. Yeah. All right, next up... we got Katarina Sojak. Let me just drink some water. Two cost. Man, Mystic Allies are pretty cheap, and I love it. 1 damage, 2 Horror Soak. Takes up the ally slot as a reaction when you reveal chaos tokens during a skill test you are performing. Exhaust Katarina Sojak. Reveal chaos under the bag until a token with the symbol is revealed. Resolve that token and ignore the rest. So can you do this after you draw the initial token? Unclear. Perfect. You can do it after. It's like Wendy. But can I also do it first? Unclear. Let's go. You love to hear it. Journal Vibe, she is your this is your token for step 3. So is this step 3 the token that you draw for your test? Because that's what my gut was when I read the translation of this card, and it's also what my gut here is, you know? It's the token that you draw. Yeah, it's like, it is your token. Don't mind me, I'm just turning down my brightness a bit. I'm going to play with that, because that does seem like the way that makes the most sense. What did you guys give her, a 3.1? I mean, I'm probably going to give her a 3. She seems like a good ally, right? Like, she seems pretty legit. Yes, I know, another 3. I know. Yeah, I know, it's missing the wood, right? When you would reveal chaos tokens. So what is she good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again. Huh. All right. I mean, drawing symbol tokens. If you want to draw symbol tokens, it's really good. Also, it's really good if you want to ignore tokens, right? I like the idea of playing Serial Killer Diana, where she just locks various people in her basement. So she plays Katarina, she plays Olive, and she just says, "You are going in my basement, and you are never coming back out." That's kind of funny to me. Bless, curse. I think she's gonna be a. You know what? I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna give her a 3.5. I actually think she's gonna be super playable. I'm giving her a 3.5. I think she's actually really good. Just saying all this has really kind of put it in perspective, right? I don't know if she's a 4, but maybe she will be this time next year after I have a year of playing with her. I haven't played with her yet. But like Blessed, Cursed, Sixth Sense, fuck me, Wither, fuck me. I think that's the first time I swore this video. Wow. I can just guarantee a Wither trigger. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna give her 3.5. She might be a 4 next year, but I think right now I need to play with her. I need to play with her and see. Because, I mean, she basically turns the Mythos Cup into just tokens. That's just symbol tokens. Which means that your chance of drawing both the Elder Sign and the autofail goes up, which is also really interesting. I think she's pretty good. She might be, you know what? I'm not going to say that AP90 that you're wrong for the 4. She might be, but I'm not there yet. I need to play with her. That's one of MJ's Call of Cthulhu characters. No, that's pretty sick. Yeah, cool card. Very nice design. All right. We now have the Sign of Zenotaph. Zelotaph, sorry. I put an N when it should have been an L. All right. What does this card even do? Myriad, so 3 cost, Arcane Slot, Myriad, Seal, Skull, Cultist, Tablet, or Squid uses 3 charges. Force, when your turn begins, you must spend 1 charge or discard Sign of Zelotaph. As a lightning bolt, discard a copy of Zonatello from your hand, replenish all charges. Ah, it's just another seal card. Right. So what I think is important about this card is that it's another card for the seal archetype, so they have some redundancy in what they can seal. It should cost 1. It is probably a little bit overcosted, but like I think at the same time, like they rightfully respect what sealing can do to a game. I think I'm going to give it a 2. I think I'm going to put it in the 2s. I think the card's fine, but like... $2.2 from chat. Should this be unique? No, anyone can go like this. That's what this guy's doing. He's going like this. Anyone can do that. Sealing symbols yucky? What the fuck are you talking about, my friend? Why is sealing symbols yucky? Those are the ones you want to seal. Why would I want to seal a minus, like, 2? No, I'm not going on until you explain why sealing symbols is yucky. No, I feel like this is only going to see play in the exact same place, like, because sealing stuff like the -5 is better. That doesn't make it yucky. Why does that make it yucky? Give me an actual reason. Stand up for your convictions. If you're going to say something, defend them just because sealing stuff like the -5 is better. I'm not moving on. I'm stuck on this. Jim Culver? Nah, you're a fucking troll, man. Get out of here. Your opinions suck. All right, let's keep going. All right, the great work. All right, this is an asset, permanent, limit 1 per deck. Purchase only at deck creation. You're in 1 additional experience after each scenario of the campaign. If you're defeated, you're usurped by the homunculus. Replace each signature card in your deck with a random basic weakness for this card. Replace your investigator with it for the remainder of the campaign. And then we have the homunculus. Sorry, the great work. He's not an actual card, just so you can see some him in reference. It's this guy down here. Great work equals free XP with 0 downside. It's true. It's true. And honestly, this card makes more sense because they likely designed this card with rotation in mind. Design rotation, not actual play rotation, right? With that said, I actually don't think I am going to ever play this card. 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Chat's a 3.3. Where do I live on it? Does this stop you from dying? No, I don't think it does. Killed is like bigger than defeated. Killed and insane are kind of like the end-all be-all. If you're dead, there's no body for the homunculi to take over. I'm gonna give this a 2.5. I don't think it's good. I think it's fine. I think people are gonna play it, but so here's what I think is gonna actually happen. Is that you're going to play this card, you're going to get defeated, and then you're going to pretend you weren't. It's going to happen more often than you think. Someone's going to play the great work, They're going to get defeated, and then they're going to be like, I'll just start a new character. And if you do that, I have no respect for you. So it's like, it's one of those things where I think people aren't going to actually play the downside of this card. Now, no, not you, Nick. Not you. I know you're legit. You had someone use the fucking string along on a pit viper. I don't expect that from your group. So like, it's one of those things that I think that's just like the unfortunate reality of this card. But I also think that, to me, 7 experience isn't, I don't need it. It's like one of those things where like I'm happy with what I have for my experience cards in my collection, so I don't really need another one, you know? But this card does make, so as Zersparrow's saying, this does make, and as I was saying earlier, with the rotation coming, I think this makes total sense. Also, Shameless God, I want to play the Homunculus starting scenario 2 for the challenge, along with the... I agree! No, that sounds like a very fun run to try with the aesthetic. Yeah. Crowbar better than Alan? Who the fuck is Alan? If you're gonna talk like a normal person. Don't come in with your little in-jokes. Oh, Alton. Now, that makes more sense. Yeah, Crowbar's better than Alton. I think Alton is fine. I don't think he's good though. I think he's going to be more awkward than people think he's going to be. How many times are you going to seed by exactly 3? I had this big conversation about it where Alton O'Connell, we look at that one clue and it's actually just Blood of Thoth. People just don't want to have that conversation yet because they're too busy hating on Blood of Thoth. People respect click economy until they don't. And I don't respect it at all. But I think like you have to, it's there. And I think he's a good example of it. Yeah, I also think that's like with the tech with great work where you get the transfiguration to turn into someone else from it. I think that's a very fun thing that they provided. I think Great Work's good. I think it's a good card. But I think at this point I think it's the worst of the XP cards, but XP cards are still always relevant. For me personally, I just think it's lower. I've never been impressed by this card, even when it was first spoiled. I was never like, this card is what I want, you know? Can you transform the gator you used to be? I don't think there's anything stopping you. There's anything stopping you from going back to your original form. The homunculus, the flavor of it's really fun, right? The homunculus like spins around and swirls and then becomes, it's like, this is what I used to be, right? But yeah, no, I've never been, you know, if you go back to look at all the times I talked about Great Work, I was like, the card seems fine, so I'm just sticking to my guns, because I do think the card's fine. I don't think it's particularly good, I don't think it's particularly great, but I'm never going to blink if someone plays it, and there's going to be, I think, opportunities that you do want to play it. But for me, you're probably not going to see me play it much, if realistically at all. Like, I might play it, like, in a spell-focused deck, in addition to everything else, but... Alright, I forgot that this card exists, the weird Spectral Shield card. The Mystic Cycle is really weird in this one. I think it's due to the nature of them not really having an investigator for the Mystic class in this box, right? Because, like, Agatha is kind of both Seeker and Mystic. There's no, like, designated Mystic, because Gloria only got, like, 1 support card in the XP stuff. Which is good, because she's already pretty powerful. Alright, Spectral Shield is a 1-cost event. It's a spell and a spirit. Fast, play only during your turn. Attached to a player card with health and or sanity at your location. Forced, when an attached card takes 1 or more damage or horror, cancels 1 damage of that horror. The owner of Spectral Shield must remove 1 charge from an asset they control if they cannot discard Spectral Shield. I think this card's fine too, right? I think it's a neat design. I think the design's really cool. I like the idea of using your charges for other things. Like, the idea is that, like, you could play Eyes of the Dreamer or Breath of the Sleeper and be like, I don't give a shit about this. You know, like, this card has its purpose in my deck, which is to just poke enemies. And then I can use those charges for other things. Just lists one investigator card as a player card at your location. That's actually a very good clarification. Yes. Investigators are player cards at your location. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Then we have 1, 1. You guys are giving it a 2.8. I think that's pretty reasonable. I'm going to give it a 2.5, I think. I think it's a fine card. Yeah, each charge, you basically can just, like, reduce the damage and horror you take. This is a... Can it do the same? Yeah, you can do the same with the Lady Neville. Having another piece like that is really nice. I think the card, I think like it's going to get better in the right deck, which is kind of like where my fine, like the 2.5s can really, like, really shine. If you're in a deck that, like, really pops off. I like it. I think it's a cool card, though. I think that it's, you need to support it, but I think it's a fun card. Total win for, yeah, no, that's exactly what I was saying, Ostinato Avocado. Pretty much the exact same thing you were just saying. I think the design's really good, and I also can see this card performing better than it than I've given it in this rating, you know? I think it's neat, though. I think it's neat. Look at the guard isn't even looking. Like, yeah, I don't care. I got my Spectral Shield up. I think it's a cool card, though. Whispers of Doom. So this is like the Waylay, and it actually defeats that enemy. Okay, I'm fucking with this now. I'm fucking with it. Okay. So, Parlay, choose a non-weakness enemy location. It's a 3 cost, by the way. Spell Curse. Test Brain 3. This test gets +X difficulty, where X is that enemy's horror. If you succeed, defeat that enemy, or deal a 3 damage if it is elite. If you fail, place 1 Doom on that enemy. So going back to what I mentioned earlier with Waylay, it's kind of like the same sort of thing, right? Like having these 3 cost cards actually defeat the enemy. This is what Intimidation was lacking, right? And like what Waylay is, the test is generally easier because you have to do, it's like 2 actions to do this. This is just 1. I think I'm going to give this a 3. I think I was down on this card earlier, and I don't think I'll still play this card, but I think this card is actually, like, kind of legit. I think it's good. I don't think I'm going to run it that much, though. It's not my style of play, but just because it's not my style of play doesn't mean that I think it's bad. 3.4. We're very close this year, chat. Deep One Bowl, be gone! I mean, anything that kills a Deep One Bowl is really nice. Yeah, I think that's a cool card. And like, I think what I said was true earlier, where like effects like this I don't really like. Whispers is also difficult because it's a parlay card, close tax. It's true. I'm actually very curious to see if Fine Close doesn't become like fixed in the design, like doesn't become evergreen, or they don't bring it back into a cycle. Are they going to keep designing these parlay cards with that in mind? Are they going to stick to their word, right? Or are they going to still design parlay cards? Because this could have been like without Fine Close, this could have been a Bring 2 and it gets +X difficulty, right? Maybe not. I mean, I feel like it also is still priced pretty well compared to Waylay. Maybe not. I don't know if I'm buying that theory anymore for the clothes tax. I don't know as much. I think it's more like the tax for the design of the card. Because defeating an enemy is very good. You get the VP. You can use this on the Undimensions and Unseen. It's pretty sick. All right, on to Anchor Chain. We're onto the Survivor cards. And the Survivor cards are very weird this cycle because it's kind of just like... It's like the completion of a bunch of Survivor cycles that existed back in the day. Which, like, it's like one of those things where, like, this is how you also knew this current thing was coming, because, like, these cards are now, like, here are all the cycles of things that we had from Survivor's past. It's actually kind of really funny that the Survivor box worked this way. With that said, I do think Survivor got a lot of cool cards in this cycle, and I think generally the power level on them is pretty good. Anchor Chain, 3-cost asset, takes up a hand slot. While Anchor Chain is in your hand, you may perform the below action ability. If you do, discard Anchor Chain instead of exhausting it. As an action, exhaust Anchor Chain, evade. You get +1 foot for this evasion attempt. If you succeed, evade a non-elite enemy. You may discard 1 card from hand to prevent that enemy from readying during the next upkeep phase. How strong do I think this card is going to be? So I think it's definitely not the strongest of the bunch, but I definitely think it's also not the weakest of the bunch. I think it is literally right in the middle of the two. 1, 2, 3.1 from chat, 3.1 from chat. But as for me, I'll never be able to get past what Eric said, where this deep one is not the victim here. This 4 deep one is getting attacked. Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think 3 is pretty good for this. So I think what we're going to see is we're going to see, like, Anchor... I'm going to just do some spoilers. Anchor Chain here, Nautical Charts here, Hook Hand here. Well, not hook hand, it's a fishing trawl, like a fishing hook. I think that's just the way that these are going to be. So I think these cards, you need to have some sort of discard synergy for it to work. I know that there are going to be people who say that Nautical Charts can go in any deck, and I disagree with those people. Because my counter to that, my Yu-Gi-Oh! Trap card, is, do you not like the cards in your deck? Do you not want to play them? Are they just trash, right? And they might say, but no, I'm discarding them for value. I'm discarding them and then I'm going to play them from my discard pile. I'm going to recur them. Congratulations, you're a discard deck, right? And I think that carries over with all of these. The effects are good, but like, so an example of this is I'm playing an Ash Campete deck through Hemlock right now. And I put this in instead of the Mariner's Compass, the Nautical Charts, once we get there. And I was like, I'm putting these cards in my deck to play them. I want to do this instead. Counterpoint, wouldn't you play 10 deductions? No. I would not. Because I can just play Sharp Vision and just recur that and do better than a deduction can. Like, because you then, like, so then this becomes one of those things, like, if you're not discarding the cards, like, yeah, you have 10 deductions, okay? We're talking a bit about Nautical Charts. We're talking a bit about here, but they all kind of fit in the same thing. I have 10 deductions, right? So then is my deck only card draw and then cards I don't care about? Like, that's a bad deck. That's a bad deck. I can do better if I just build a deck that takes advantage of, like, my card pool, right? Like, I think that, for example, like, if I'm only playing these as deductions, I'm, like, losing the value. And the other thing, like, I mean, I could discard my Look What I Found to my Nautical Charts and turn it into a deduction. But then I'm also just like, why, right? And then again, it goes to my point, like, well, I'm discarding, like, Winging It. Well, congratulations, you're a discard deck, right? Like, that's kind of like the whole point. I think these are less universal than I've seen other people talk about, but I still think the effects are very powerful. But we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. And I think Anchor Chain's going to be in the middle. And Fishhook, let me get the poll up for chat. is going to be a 2.5. Maybe even a 2. Maybe even a 2 for Fishhook. So you may, it's in the same text, you can discard it instead of performing its action ability, instead of discard it, instead of exhausting it. Exhaust, Handhook, Fight. You get +1 for this attack if you see me discard a card. I think this card's actually bad. I'm going to put this in the 2s. I'm going to put this card in the 2. I think it's actually that much lower. So Anchor Chain is going to get a 3. Handhook's going to get a 2. Two feels like a high rating to me for Handhook. So yeah, I think that's very fair, but I do think that my 2s are cards that I can see leaving the binder in a combo deck, and specifically a combo deck that requires a lot of pieces. So like if you're playing heavy discard, and like if I'm, for example, discarding my Improvised Weapon 2, 1.6 from chat. If I'm discarding like my Improvised Weapon 2, like that's value. Like I'm happy with that, right? Like I'm happy with that. So like that's where I think, like, to me, where it lives in the 2, because I can see a reason you would play this, and that's like the level for that there. 1.5 is like never leaving the binder, and these are all cards I can see leaving the binder. These cards I don't think I want to take out of the binder. So it's just, it has to be better for me for that reason. I'm a man of my word. I stay consistent with my rating systems. I don't frick around. Lawrence Carlisle. Sculpting His Dreams, 3 costs. You get +1 book. As a reaction, discard 1 or more cards from your hand during your turn. Exhaust Lawrence Carlisle, gain 1 resource. Takes up the ally slot, soaks for 1 and 1. Like, he's good. But again, you have to be playing the right deck for it. I know you could just get +1 book. But like, let's look at the survivors. And who would want to play this without discard synergy, right? And I think the answer is a lot more narrow than it seems. I think you need to be able to be discarding stuff to make this guy actually worth it. Let's see what chat gives it. I know what I'm going to give it. Chat's given a 3.8 for Mr. Lawrence Carlisle. I'm going to give him a 3.5. I think he's good. I think he's very good, but I don't think he's great. I think that, like, even when you're, like, discarding cards, even, like, when you are, like, if you have a lot of triggers, like, he's going to be, nice at, like, getting the job done to give you some more economy, but I think that's just like, that's just level ally things though. Is it? I can think of a lot of level 0 allies I'm going to keep through the whole game. And this guy's built to be playing in George. I can see someone wanting to cut him from George. Yeah, it's the 1/1 soak. That's surprisingly relevant, too. I think this guy actually has a pretty good design in order to make him not just be, like, Superman. I think he's a cool... I mean, I'm going to play him. I'm going to enjoy playing him. But I do think that he is kind of just fine. Like, you know, he's, like, fine in terms of, like, level, like, in the long term, though. Because, I mean, I'd want... if I get 3 experience, I want this to be Granny Orn by the end of the scenario. Like, I'm not, at the end of the campaign, I'm not going to be upset if he stays, right? But I think I'd rather still just buy Granny Orn down the road. He's going to be nice, but it's like one of those things where just like, I feel like a lot of survivors that, if they're not discarding, they just have better level 0 allies they can run. So, yeah. I think he's good, though. I think he's a good card. How many discards does it need to be worth it to hit for your opinion? I don't answer questions like that because I'm not a nerd. I don't think like that. I don't think like that. You go back to what I was talking earlier about... When I was so earlier I was talking about in Mortar and Pestle about how the idea of making things back or comparing things to click economy I think isn't accurate anymore in Arkham. So it's less one of those things where like how much I don't think about how many resources am I gaining from this guy for him to be worth it. I instead ask how can I most take advantage of his ability, right? So it's just like, I want to be able to discard cards. So I'm not thinking about like, how much do I need? How much do I want? It's just like, is my deck discarding cards frequently? Then I'm probably going to want Lawrence Carlisle, right? So that's how my thought process change. Because I think that is a more relevant way to approach than trying to figure out the exact number I need, because those numbers lie, right? I think those numbers do lie. All right, on to nautical charts, which I do think is the best of the 3, pretty easily, because deduction is very good. Bob Jenkins would murder for the +1 book? He would for the first scenarios, and then I'd buy Lola Santiago, right? So I think that like even that's kind of outclassed. I think it's best in Bob for sure. He doesn't have an easy ally that he can put in, but... Nautical charge. 3 cost takes at the hand slot. While it is in your hand, you may perform the below action ability. Exhaust. Investigate. You +1 book for this investigation. If you see, you may discard 1 card from your hand, discover an additional clue. I do think this card's very good. I'm going to be putting it in the 3.5. I don't think we have a level 0 card that is a 4 for me personally. I think realistically the closest that we've seen that I think has got there for me is probably Katarina. I think this is the card that, for me, is the closest we have on a level 0 card for being a 4, for me personally. So I'm going to give this guy a 3.5. Chat loves nautical charts, though. But it's going back to what I was saying earlier. I have the same sort of conundrum where I'm feeling like I need to be playing this in a discard deck. Otherwise, why am I doing what I'm doing? And I think also at the same time, I think this card's going to get outclassed. I think this card's going to get outclassed and is not going to be able to keep up with the pace of the game going on in the long term. That's why I'm kind of bummed we didn't get an upgraded... we didn't get an upgraded winging it, but also like I respect that we didn't. But it would have been nice to see, because I do think that just like ultimately, I don't know, survivors don't really have the same. It's very curious. But that's the end. This is why I'm doing this. Maybe this time next year I'll be like, what was I thinking? Giving this a 3.5, it's obviously a 4, right? But it is nice for survivors to have another way to get clues. So like that's very nice for the survivor class for sure. All right, we are nearing the end of this. Next up, we got Profane Idol, otherwise known as the garbage can for the brain. The garbage can lid for the brain. One cost, takes up the accessory slot, 3 horror. Profane Idol can only be played from your discard pile. When Profane Idol is defeated, shuffle it into your deck instead of discarding it. I think this is just as bad as the other one, too. I think it's fine, but I'm going to give it a 2. I'm not really like... This ain't really moving the needle for me, you know? I think there's just better things I can do in my deck. How many times am I looking at taking 3 horror? It doesn't really excite me. I don't think it's particularly impressive. I mean, it's like improvised shield. Like, I think there's decks where it's going to be fun in, like Bob, Joey the Rat decks that Bryn did. Like, that's a very fun thing to do. I mean, there's also, like, things you can do. You can do, like, the guiding spirit tricks with it, like just play another card into it. But I think overall, yeah, you guys agree too, 2.1. That's not a crazy thing. Yeah, it's gonna be playable, but I don't think it's particularly exciting to play. All right, and now we have the 2 events that are... The improvised weapon cycle is complete. See, it's just cycles being complete for the survivor class. Catch. This is a 0 cost event. It's a tactic and a trick. As the cost to play catch, choose and discard an item aspect to play that takes up 1 hand slot from your hand or play area. Evade. You get +X foot for this evasion attempt, where X is the chosen asset's printed cost. If you succeed against a non-elite enemy, that asset was in your play area. That enemy does not ready during the next upkeep phase. I can't live in a world without Mr. Potterson. He's a cute little teddy bear. I mean, it's an evade card, so you already know I'm lower on it than the other cards. Unless, like, it does freeze, but it's like a one-shot effect, a repeatable freeze. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's better. I don't think so. I'm going to give it a 2.5. I know you don't need to spend a card for it like you need to do for Anchor Chain, but I think that this card's just like... No lie, Astute, that's exactly what my brain was thinking when I read this card. I was like, hey, it's a trick for Rita. Wait a minute. She can already play it. Chat's going 2.3. So again, we're very close. Mark Harrigan Evade Tech. Hell yeah, Mark. It's your turn to throw your things at the guy. I mean, like, in all fairness, Act of Desperation is very good in Mark. It's because it deals damage. But I do think that, if not Catch, the other one is going to be very good in Mark, right? I think the card will work as well as what's happening on the art. It is true, this Gould doesn't give a shit. This kid is dead. This kid is cooked. He's done. Notably, I think while Catch might not work in Mark Harrigan, I do think that Unconventional Method is gonna do some things in Mark Harrigan. Mark Harrigan, the sexy flexy Mark Harrigan. Dude, we just coined the deck tech for it when I make the when I make that in the future. Sexy flexy Mark Harrigan is gonna love this card. 0 cost event, it's an insight and a tactic. As this cost to play Unconventional Method, choose and discard an item asset that takes up at least 1 hand slot from your hand or play area. Investigate, you get +X for this +X book for this investigation, where X is the chosen asset's printed resource cost. If you succeed in that asset was in your play area, discard 1 additional clue your location. Yes, so I think this card's really nice. I'm gonna give it a 3.5. I think this card is legit. I think this is a very good card. It's not as good as Act of Desperation, but Act of Desperation is like a 4 to a 4.5. I think that, like, this is a legit card, for sure. All right, and what did you guys give it? Just a classic middle-of-the-road 3. Wow, a non-seeker card for Kate is kind of sick. It's kind of sick for sure. So yeah, Unconventional Method, I think the effect is good. And I think that it's going to see a play in a lot of good decks. I'm running this in like all my survivors going forward. These should be called the Yeet cards. I'm down for that, the Yeet cycle. Unconventional method, catch, and improvised weapon. Improvised weapon is still easily the best. Because it also gives you the money back. It also gives you the money back. But I think this one's really nice. I think it's going to be nice for this. I'm glad they aimed a little bit lower than the first cycle. Hard agree. Hard agree with that one. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good spread on the level 0 cards for sure. But we have one more to talk about. Contemplative. Sorry, I have to go here. I'm all tied up. Contemplative is a level 0 skill. It's innate. You may commit Contemplative to any investigation or skill test during a parlay attempt at your location or connecting location. If this test is successful, the performing investigator discovers one clue at their location. Clue brick equals good. Yeah. Clue brick is good. Why no symbols? Because it is the opposite of trick shot? No, what's it called? Brick. It's just I just know brick. Cheap shot? Nope. Brick. What's brick called, chat? What's long shot? Thank you. Yeah, because it's a mirror of this card. I knew it was blank shot. What did I give that card? I think I gave it... So, I think this card is good. I think this card's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Only 1, 3. 3.9. I think this card is very good. But I think it is worse than long shot. Mostly because I think damage, bonus damage, is nicer than a bonus clue. I do think that Vicious Blow is better than Deduction. I think they're both like 5s, right? But if I had to like put one above the other, so it's the same thing here. I think at this point now, I'd give Long Shot a 4. And I think I'm going to give Contemplative a 4 as well. I think it's, so it is, we did have a level 0 card that got into 4, and it's the same sort of thing. I mean, I could put it in the 5 as like the staple, right? I could even put it in 4.5, but I think I'm going to put it in 4 for right now. I think this year I'm like, I think like Long Shot's going to go down in my ranking. To a 4. I had it as a 5 when I first did it. And I think that it being, it is like, they're like the same tier. Do I think they're worse than Vicious Blow and Deduction? I do. They have some nice upside, but they also have notable downside as well. Has to be parlay though? Nope. Can also be an investigation. To an investigation or skill test during a parlay attempt. So it's either of them. So yeah, so it's just a deduction, you know. That's a good point as well, Monocle Man. Long Shot also has a lot of little synergies, like with Hatchet, that elevated it a little bit, and Contemplative doesn't have it. I think also Long Shot being on Evade is more relevant than we're actually giving it credit for in terms of this conversation as well, so we got to respect that. But yeah, no, I think that this is a nice card. I think it's obviously going to see a lot of play, and it's going to be like close to a staple, if not a staple, for as long as it is in current. They need better names for that. They need better names for that. All right, we are on to the neutral cards, and we're going to start with Aesthetic. A card that ultimately I wish did not exist. That is an interesting change, Nick. I never realized that. All right, Aesthetic. Campaign mode only, permanent, limit 1 per deck, purchase only at deck creation. When you purchase this card, gain 10 experience. For the remainder of the campaign, you cannot earn experience. So this card's very interesting, right? If we talk about this card outside of the use case where if you are eliminated, you just use this for your investigator, right? Like, let's talk about it outside of that, because I think that is the coward's way to use this card. If you do that to me, like, sorry, if you do that, you are dead to me. And I don't care, you don't have to care about that, is what I was gonna say. You don't have to care about my opinion of you, because I'm just some guy. But I am gonna stand on that. 2.5 from chat. And if I ever do it, chat, you need to not let me forget that I did it, okay? If I ever say it, and then I start to like, what was past Justin talking about? You have to make sure, you have to like play this, you have to clip this, and you have to play this for me. You need to be like, Justin, you said, and you need to have respect for yourself, and you need to not do it. However, let's talk about the actual use cases of aesthetic, right? Where the idea of it's a challenge run is kind of neat. 2, I've also seen people being like, I'm going to take aesthetic as like Father Mateo and then play down the rabbit hole, right? And arcane research. So it's like one of those things where like they reduce the cost of experience of the first spell you buy, right? And down the rabbit hole. So you can use that to cheat experience and just start with 15 and then like still end with a normal deck and just become like super powered at the start of the thing, right? I think those are fun ideas. Do I think they're good ideas? Not necessarily, but I do think that those are more interesting to me for using aesthetic as opposed to thank you that Father Mateo, don't spend the XP until after the first scenario. Wouldn't that make things more... No, because you'd be upgrading all the things. Yeah, you just bank it all for the first one. I still don't think it makes aesthetic good, but I'm not humoring the idea of using it as a mid-campaign replacement. I'm not humoring that. One thing also as well is that I saw some people talk about it. If like you take this as like a survivor investigator, like say you were 2 survivors, you essentially just like change the pace of the scenarios where it's no longer about finding victory. It's just about winning as quick as possible, which is also particularly interesting, right? So like, yeah, I don't think it's good. I'm going to give it a 2. I know you can play it, so it's going to fit in that 2 for me. Yeah, Iron Man Tech. Yeah. It's an interesting card. I wish it just didn't exist, though. And I think Travis is going to feel the same. I think Travis is going to feel the same, and then Bryn's like, aesthetic challenge. But we haven't talked about this card yet, but we will in the near future on the channel, and I'm very curious to see, because I just don't like it. All right, on to Short Rest. Otherwise known as Yucky Poo Poo, the card. Great art. I love the art on this card. I gotta give credit where credit is due. This is a 1-cost event. It's a Myriad and a Spirit. Heal 1 damage or horror from an investigator or ally asset at your location. As a reaction after investigator location, play Short Rest. Play another Short Rest from your hand, paying its cost. So, Piranha, I think that's actually a good point as well. It's a bad card, glad it exists, reminds me of one with nothing from MTG. I think that's a good point. As for Short Rest, honestly, I'm going to give this one a 1. I'm going to give this one a 1. I don't think Bryn's going to play this card because it doesn't actually do anything interesting. Like, it doesn't have like a... Like, what's the peak? He plays 3 of them and he spends 3 to heal 3? Like, that's not that exciting. Bryn, like, likes the exciting parts of the cards, you know? He wants to do, like, the fun stuff, and that's not really a fun peak. I gave it a 2 for great art. The art is very good. Yeah, and there's only 3 copies in the box. There's only 3. Like, it has a fun fantasy of just being like, we're all going to run it, you know? So, like, that's kind of fun. You can do that, but I don't think this is a good effect. The peak is, yeah, the peak is being big hand and recur them, withdraw from thin deck, aka meh, yes. Because as Nick was saying too, right? Like, why not just don't take the damage or the horror, or like use soak that also does things, or just like survive the game because you're probably going to be okay. Like, I understand like healing is good for like newer players, but at the same time, newer players need to learn that there is like good healing and there is like bad healing, and this, unfortunately, is bad healing. All right, and then the last card of this video is something that I never have while streaming. Confidence. So confidence is a neutral skill. It's innate. You see short rest? See? I have no confidence. Max 1 committed per test. For each additional chaos token revealed during the skill test, if it was cancelled or ignored, confidence gains a wild to a maximum of +3 icons. This MFer is confident, but that's because he too cheats a chest. And every time they're playing a chessboard, these MFers cheat. So if Agatha didn't exist, this card would have been Mystic, right? But now because canceling and ignoring tokens are becoming like multi-class, it's a neutral now. I do like that you can kind of use it like retroactively with curse tokens, right? So like, or a curse or a bless causes another token to reveal, it just gets like a little bonus on it. It's just like, boom, here you go. Boom, here you go. Chat's giving it a 2.9. I'm giving this a 2. I don't think this card is good. I don't think it's terrible, and I can see myself playing it, but I do not think this card is a good card. I think I see the decks I'd want to play it in, but I think you need a lot of pieces to make those decks really, really work. I can always tell what cards inspire people to vote and what cards don't. Like Blood of Thoth gets 1 million votes. Okay. Well, that's it, huh? Man, I was like, we're only gonna do the level 0s. It's gonna be a short video. 2 hours and 20 minutes later. I like doing it with the tier list, though. It's a good way for us to see. So we have Short Rest and Blood of Thoth being our 1s here. I've had worse being our 1.5 because it doesn't make me like, I think it's like, I can see a reason to play it. These are our 2s. I think these all seem pretty accurate. 2.5s, yeah, all seems good too. There's nothing here that's like glaring to me. 3s seem pretty alright too. I like all of these. Yeah, I agree, Tactus. I think the tiers is a good way to do this going forward. I was even actually thinking of cutting out the audience votes, but I'm glad I didn't, because audience votes, they seem good, and they give me something to bounce off of. But we were very close this year in doing this. And then here's our lone 4. So notably in the next video we do, I might break this up into 2. It might be like class cards and then specialist cards, right? We're going to see how that goes. But, so this tier list won't be here for the next one. I'm going to just be wiping the slate clean. But we can at least see for this video here. And again, there is a link to this spreadsheet down in the comments, or down in the video description, but it might have spoilers because the other videos are going to be recorded by the time that this one comes up. But you can kind of see, but yeah, we're actually very close this year. Your average is a 2.87 and my average is a 2.62 between the two of us. Notably, though, that checks out because we have a lot of experience cards to go, and I think that there are a lot of nice experience cards in this set. But again, I can't think of a 5, but we're gonna have to see. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by liking, commenting, subscribing, or if you want to go above and beyond, you can join our Patreon and get your name with all these awesome people here who, you know, help me do this full time. So if you want to help me do this full time, that's the way to do it. But thank you so much, everybody. Have a good one. And as always, the GGs.